Hi, listeners, and thanks for joining us today. As I was saying in the intro, Jim Paro is going to join us. We're going to talk a little bit about technology, the nonprofit arena, and a bunch of other stuff. Jim, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for visiting us today.
Thanks, Brian. Happy to be here.
Of course, your background, a lot of technology, a lot of innovation. Tell us, and now what you're doing now, and in the YMCA world, and other things that are very broad in their scope. Tell us how you got here. Like, how did you get into this? Like, what sparked your entrance into the fitness space and the nonprofits and into technology?
It was actually an accident. I started off my career in the for-profit space in a internet startup and cut my teeth just before and after the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s, and learned a lot and kind of bounced around. Did some work for some higher ed and some aerospace manufacturer, and saw a job posted at the YMCA for technology. Needed to relocate back to the Philadelphia area, and took the opportunity. Didn't know anything about the YMCA, didn't know what the Y was all about or the fitness space, and learned in the 15 years that I was at the Y. Learned a lot, and over the course of my career, moved from technology more into strategy and operations. And when I exited the Y after 15 years, had been chief strategy officer for a few years there.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working in the Y community in different ways over the course of many, many years. And the Y community is a very kind of unique community in the kind of attributions of what it does for a lot of communities and neighborhoods, and the long list of people who have dedicated their lives and doing things around it. What was your impression when you worked at the Ys? I mean, did you find it particularly rewarding? I know a lot of people do when I talk to them.
Very rewarding. Loved the serving all different types of the community members, different goals for the organization. It's such a holistic approach to health and wellness,
Yeah.
where it's not just fitness, but it's teaching kids how to swim and caring for them in childcare so their parents can go to work. And health goals for a parent is part of it is to be able to work and provide for their family, and helping them achieve those goals through childcare and other means is hugely important. So I just love the gamut of what we did, and that whole idea of not turning anybody away who based on what they could afford, and supporting the community it was amazing, and I loved my time at the Y.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful group of communities and people and leadership. And being a nonprofit, and I've worked with nonprofits. I'm active with a few now. There's some stereotypes maybe when it comes to innovation and technology adoption. Some people feel like maybe the for-profit commercial world might be a little quicker on the draw. That maybe nonprofits, since they're more kind of mission focused, maybe they're not as quick to innovate. What do you think about that? Is that a generalization that's not really true, or do you given your background through both for-profit and nonprofit, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can speak to the for-profit work that I did prior versus the nonprofit. I don't know the fitness space necessarily, but the nonprofits, I think they range in capabilities and just strategy and adoption of technology. It differs per organization, probably just the same way it does in the for-profit space. See the change now more so as, folks are coming into the industry, young folks starting in the YMCA movement, and they've grown up with technology. They just expect it to be there. The other piece that drives a lot of YMCAs to adopt technology is boards and board volunteer involvement. Those boards see things happening in their organizations, and expect the YMCAs and other nonprofits to be doing similar things. And so I think those two components are really starting to drive, especially YMCAs and other nonprofits, to adopt technology. And it's necessary. It helps them, potentially save money, drive revenue. It's important to do, and members expect it as well. We always talk about, it's probably a little outdated now, but the Amazon experience, right? And the simplicity of that, and going in and buying something and having it shipped, and members expect that when they're interacting with the YMCA as well.
Yeah. And so it's a conundrum in a way. I'm sure you've seen it as I have at different phases of our lives, where the next iteration of the new thing in tech emerges, and everyone gets seduced by its promise, but then the rubber hits the road, and you actually have to make it make business sense.
Mhm.
So is that part of how you came to operate Fit? Because you saw an opportunity to actually make a business case through tech?
Yeah, it's a little bit. I mean, what I really saw was challenges that the YMCA's and other nonprofits faced around, handling risk and keeping track of some of these things, the turnover that they deal with as an organization, and ensuring that that knowledge is transferred from person to person as it moves, as they change in the organization. And so I think for me, it was more, hey, there's a need here, and technology can certainly help fill this need, and look at it a little bit from a different lens. I think, look at it more from how are we going to support these organizations that maybe have a different level of resources, might not need all the features that exist in competitive products, but need a base level across maybe a wider area. Because that's what they need to take advantage of, and they don't need the extra features in the platform.
Yeah, and because mostly, I know in the commercial fitness space, generally speaking, the focus is on, how can I grow revenues through membership sales, and how can I
Mhm.
retain more of those people and do some basic things, and they really basically sell and keep as much of that as you can, and that's a real focus of technology adoption. But
Mhm.
even in the commercial world, there are a lot of aspects of that potential that are lost because things like asset management or risk mitigation, documentation around because of
Right.
the liabilities that you referenced. I mean, and a lot of that sometimes I think in general, I know a lot of people pay attention to it, but in general, I think some of those things are kind of forgotten about until they
Mm.
blow up in your face, right? I mean,
Yes.
so tell us about how your tool helps organizations with what it does help them with.
So I always use stories, and I talked to one of my customers who signed on after this happened to them, but they missed a lease renewal, and they have contracts that are expiring. They have leases with
Yep.
different terms, and they missed a renewal date. They weren't notified, and it cost them $500,000 a year in unexpected expense because they were looking to get out and missed the renewal. I think there had been some turnover at the organization, and they just lost track. And so something as simple as just being notified when your contracts and when your leases are coming up for renewal is critically important, and can save an organization a lot of money. I think what we're seeing with most of our customers is just the insurance marketplace is becoming more challenging. Insurance rates continue to rise. It's a litigious society. And so if you're not doing these basic things that our software helps support, like your audits, your quick checks, your incident reporting, it's just harder to defend. And in the end result, it's harder to maintain insurance, and you see your rates go up. And so, that's what kind of where we focus on is, these back end processes that are really kind of an indication of the health of the organization. I always said that, where there's smoke, there's fire. And so if there's these things that you're supposed to be doing from a checklist perspective, and they're not happening, and you can see and measure that, where are the other gaps that are happening, right? That you're
Yep.
not able to necessarily measure and see, and some of those, soft things that are supposed to be going on. And so I always look at these as they're leading indicators of, are things healthy from an operations perspective, right? Even though they're not
Yeah.
direct frontline operations.
Yes, and best practice, and then those things can kind of get ignored. Like I think the least
Mhm.
example is a very, very good one, and that's a lot of money when you're talking
Yes.
about $500,000 or more because you can't get out of a bad lease because you forgot
Right.
that the thing expired. Are
Mhm.
there other examples of things that you might share that would be something your tool kind of helps organizations with?
Yeah. So, for us, we focus a lot on the risk side. And so, for the organizations that we help today, getting timely notifications of serious incidents is important. When there's a water rescue in an aquatic environment, or, when there's a serious injury in the facility, and 911 was called, to train your frontline staff what to do in every instance is difficult. It's a never-ending
Yep.
battle to train folks as they come in, and so for us, defining those business processes, those alerts, those things that happen. It's comforting for an operator to know that, hey, when one of my staff submits this issue, that 911 was called, or that there was a serious incident, I'm going to get a text message alert, right? That, hey, something happened in my facility and I need to check in and deal with it. And so that alerting really drives a comfort level, and for both staff and for operators, right? Staff don't have to think about, what do I have to do in this instance? They just, complete the audit, complete the best practice or the checklist, and operators know that they're going to get notified if something goes wrong, if something doesn't happen as it's expected, and get alerted. So that brings a comfort level.
Yeah, that and increasingly today, for all the reasons you cited, and not the insurance component, the actual cost of risk. I mean, there's all kinds of litigation going on all the times about everything now, it seems. So you have to be very careful, because you can be really putting your organization at huge risk if you're not having some systematic method of having that managed. So when it comes to adoption of this kind of a tool in a typical organization, I think implementation, how are you approaching that when it comes to your tool, and what are some of the biggest challenges do you see when trying to deploy a new technology in an arena like this?
I think change management is the biggest challenge. We talk, in our initial onboarding call, we immediately talk with the folks about who's going to be on the implementation team. Do they have the right representation in the organization? Because it is a shift in culture. The software is a tool, but really it's a culture shift. Trying to shift to a risk culture and a risk-aware culture where you're doing some of these things is not easy, and it takes both leadership and frontline staff to work together on it. So we always try to make sure that we've got the right voices in the room, the right folks who can help change through the organization. That's certainly a challenge. It's also a challenge to bite off everything all at once, and so we talk to the organizations about what's their biggest pain point. Sometimes it's the CFO with contracts. They got burned by a lease or a contract and they want to implement that first. Other times it's organizations that really want to get a handle on their audits or some of their compliance, and so we help them with those first. So it's a lot. It's a constant improvement process that they're going through. But from an onboarding perspective, that change is tough if you don't have that culture already. If you have a culture, where risk is important to the organization, and you're always looking at things from a risk lens, it's an easier lift.
Yeah, it's not. It's usually the technology is usually not the biggest barrier. It's the people, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. And we try to help folks as they go through implementation to work through those processes. When we do our training, we're talking to staff about, best practices and things that they can do to make sure that their frontline staff are doing what they need to be doing, and then getting back to the important things, which is, interacting with members, and that's really what we want them to do. So
yeah,
we take the approach. We don't want them spending a ton of time in our platform. That's why we do a lot of the alerting. Right. We want them to be notified if something's not happening according to schedule, or something, didn't go according to plan. But other than that, you should be doing what's important to the fitness industry, and that's interacting with members.
Yeah, that's right. And for listeners to know, of course, in the show notes, we'll have links to Operate Fit and to Jim's profile, so you can learn more about what they do. Jim, so you're an old guy like me, right? I'm tongue in cheek. So you've been around the .com days. You worked through that crazy time, and you've been in technology and implementation of different technologies in the commercial and in the nonprofit side. And you started your own business with the launch of Operate Fit, which you've had for a number of years now. What are some pearls of wisdom? I always like to get a few pearls of wisdom from our guests to kind of, looking back across your life and professional career, et cetera. What are a couple of breadcrumbs you could throw to the audience that you think we should be keeping an eye on?
Well, I'll talk about, I think some of the things that have helped Operate Fit become successful, and part of that is listening. I have ideas, thoughts, direction I want to take the company. our customers are the users, the end users, and so it needs to support them and make them successful. And so if we hadn't listened, if we hadn't adjusted our course based on feedback and things we learned from our customers, I don't think we would be as successful. So I think, not being able to be afraid to talk to folks outside the domain you're looking at. Everybody has a thought, an opinion. How do you take that in, and apply it to what you're doing? And so that feedback loop is really important. So that's certainly helped us. I don't talk to a lot of folks without AI coming up right now. AI is a huge technology shift, and everybody's got their own thoughts on it. It certainly has helped us as we build, operate, fit, and we continue to evaluate how it applies. It's helped summarize some things in our platform. We use AI to help summarize incident reports for staff so they can quickly read and understand what's happening without going through hundreds of fields and trying to synthesize this incident that occurred. They can read a quick 30-second snippet. And so I always tell folks, try AI, continue to use it, continue to learn. Don't be afraid to just ask it things and work through and learn the tool. It's constantly evolving. And what I've really seen that's neat is some of the skill sets that have been locked away, I would say, behind a door. I was talking to somebody the other day who's helping their company outside the fitness space, but helping their company design some product innovations and what that looks like. And they still have designers on staff who are doing the real work. But this person through AI is able to create a mock-up and explain to a designer, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is visually. Whereas before that would have been locked behind a skill set that, that person didn't have. And so I see AI helping to really accelerate processes, not necessarily replacing people yet, but accelerating things and making it, more of a collaborative process, which is really amazing to see. And, so I always encourage folks to continue to try it and just experiment and see what it can do.
Yeah, I'm using Claude Coworker the last few days, and it's even more profound when you go do this for me, and it just goes and does it. I mean, it's pretty amazing stuff. I think that's pretty good advice, my friend. Well, Jim, I really appreciate you spending time with the audience and myself today, and we wish you great continued success with Operate Fit. And thanks for sharing your wisdom and insights as to technology and nonprofits.
Bryan, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It was great to be here.
Thank you.